should mute why don't you put yourself on mute if you're remote?
Yeah, I will. I just want to make sure. I'm doing this on at my daughter's house on my wife's iPad. So
Wow, we've got I think our transcontinental joiner tonight in Mark Diller. Mark, I hate to burst your bubble, but this isn't probably worth you staying up as late as you are for.
It's not transcontinent. It's not transcontinent. It's transocean.
I thought it was transcontinental.
Transatlantic.
I think
Catherine, thank you. Transatlantic. I should know that.
Wins the award I think Catherine wins the award for being at a Zoom CB7 meeting from war-torn Romania on the border of Ukraine. So God bless, and I'm in no shape to complain.
Yeah, Catherine, I think was the longest. I had Switzerland a couple of times, but that wasn't as far as where she was. And I think you're in Paris, if I can disclose that. I don't know, but that's great. So why don't we get started?
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I think the first thing, if everyone could just mute themselves, and so we just want to get through some of the business pieces first, and walk through a few things before we go into the meeting. Like I said, we have just under 45 minutes. This has obviously been a busy period for our nation and our city with the elections today, the primaries, also what's happened in the Supreme Court, everything else. So I hope everyone is doing well. We did want to host this meeting tonight to have an update. We thought at the time it might be the last opportunity to have a meeting. We know now that that is not the case, that we can have another virtual meeting before. So the first thing I wanted to announce to the full group is that our plan to vote on the resolution that was circulated by the Borough President's Office to the full board, which was circulated by Max earlier this week, we expect to plan to take a vote on that on July 11th, Monday evening. What we wanted to do tonight was walk you through how that resolution came to be, the background for it. And I also wanted to commend Shelly and Mark, as well as myself a little bit, because we have been keeping sort of a running document from all of our task force meetings, what many of you have contributed to. And we'd like to share that with all of you to look through before the vote is taken on the 11th. We did not feel that a vote taken tonight would be thoughtful, given that we only have 45 minutes on this call, and that we need everyone on this board to have time to look through what Community Board 7 has actually done over the last 6 months. So can I already see your hand raised? And I will call on you in due course. But I wanted to turn it over to Max for just a quick second, just to maybe either share or walk through sort of from the Borough President's Office perspective, where things stand and what's required of us to do. Just by way of background, for those of you who don't know, the current rationale is that we will be required to return without a vote. We will have changes on July 15th now. Between now and July 15th, we can still meet virtually, we can still do Zooms. So with that in mind, I just wanted to turn it over to Max for a quick second to update from what's happening from the Borough President's perspective.
Sounds good. Thanks, Elizabeth. Actually, Elizabeth summed it up pretty well. The governor and the mayor keep kind of leapfrogging, so to speak, extending the emergency orders that enable us to continue meeting fully remote as it is. At some point in the future, they're going to stop leapfrogging over each other, and at which point we're going to have to then comply with the open meetings law. And that's pretty much what we're obviously working to do, and what some of the language that was sent out is about. Just a little preface, at this point, I believe 10 of the 12 Manhattan community boards have passed that specific language that I sent out last night. It's just us and one, maybe two others that are remaining. That language is not meant to take away our ability to craft what defines a reasonable reason to Zoom from home. We'll still have the latitude to work on that, but it does lay the general parameters that pretty much has been looked over by the borough president's office, their council, and et cetera. That's pretty much it, actually.
Great. So I guess if there are questions related to that, Ken, and not questions related to what we're proposing, we can have you answer your quick. We can hopefully answer your quick question.
Yeah, quick. I'm assuming that we wouldn't just vote on it on the 11th, but be able to offer amendments and change it.
Actually, can I jump in? We could. Everyone is passing that pretty much as is. I'm not sure if we're able to, add amendments there. I'm not certain, but that again, we wouldn't have to add in our specific parameters about what constitutes a reasonable excuse to Zoom from home into that. We could pass that later on individually. And yeah. Well,
there are other things that I was not happy with in it.
Oh, okay.
And
well, I think Ken, at some point what we'd like to do is, we're not going to be able to submit something back with our comments to the borough president's office for them to update and send to the 12 community boards again. They've listened to our Zoom calls, they've listened to our meetings, they've incorporated a lot of what we have, not everything. I don't agree with everything that's in there either, but I think what they're asking for is an up or down vote on that resolution by July 15th.
So none of the other boards, 10 boards that have passed this have offered any amendments, have changed it at all?
Max can speak to that, but I don't think so.
That's correct. The only exception to that, I think, is my old board that passed, again, the exact same language, but added some qualifier. I didn't get a copy to share, I'm sorry. But some qualifier where it's those rules all apply, but just for an interim period to get them through the summer or something of that nature. And when I get that from my old district manager, I can share that with Elizabeth and everyone. But other than that, everyone passed that pretty much verbatim.
If I could just follow up, I know the borough president's office does model bylaws, which we are free to change, and we have changed radically. Why is this different?
Oh, sorry.
No, Max, go ahead. I think you and I are going to say the same thing, so go ahead.
I'm not sure that we don't definitely have the opportunity to do so, to change them. I can find out. It was unclear. I seem to be getting a little conflicting advice from everyone. That's really all I have, but it could be the case, and we can try to find out.
That would be great.
So look, everyone, I think the purpose of tonight is to present, just if anyone doesn't want to be on this call and doesn't want to be on for the next 35 minutes, jump off. Tonight is really to look through what's been presented to us that we're going to do a July 11th vote, a conversation and a vote on what has been presented to us by the borough president's office. Between now and then, I think we have an opportunity to address the issues that we as a community board and as a task force have come up with over the last 5-6 months, that we can hopefully either decide that will influence whether we say, yes, we support this, or no, we don't. And if we don't support it, we have reasons why, based on what this task force and what all of you have come up with. I'm going to take very quick questions, then I really want to go into the substance of what, sort of collecting feedback, unless everyone with their hand raised has substantive comments. And I think I saw Mark first, then Barbara, and then Beverly. And that's where we'll go. Mark, over to you.
Thank you. I take it that concerns with the two big things that I find missing from the borough president's office, I understand you to say that we can take up at another time. Those two big things are who decides what is an extraordinary circumstance.
Yes.
And I tried to flesh out a version based on certainly my own thoughts. Shelly helped me and Elizabeth helped. And I tried to draw from what our various discussions were, and that's been circulated. But as I understand it, that can be discussed in terms of what constitutes extraordinary circumstances and who gets to decide that. Those are two big things. But if the will of the committee is that that be discussed at another time, as long as we actually do that, then that's fine. So the one thing that, and perhaps I'm previewing something that's coming down the pike, is the business of a doctor's note. And the borough president's model resolution calls for a community board member to have to produce a doctor's note to support a claim for a medical version of an extraordinary circumstance. I find that problematic in a lot of ways, not the least of which is that I seem to be doing a lot of work in my professional life with a hospital right now. And so I'm acutely attuned to what HIPAA provides, and that doctor's note can't say anything. I think the most it can say is, I'm a doctor and you should let Mark out, but it can't tell you why. And then taking a step back from that, I'm not in third grade anymore. And neither are any of you, except perhaps for Jay, who's got his hand up. And I find it a little troubling. I take my colleagues at their word when they tell me that they're not able to attend in person. I don't want to be in the business of looking behind that. I don't think any of the rest of us should either. I think there does need to be a priority or a hierarchy of who gets, it shouldn't be first come, first serve. Again, now we're getting into what constitutes an extraordinary circumstance. But I do think that somebody with a disability should trump me with a head cold. But that's something we can work out in the later phrasing. But the idea of a doctor's note troubles me both professionally and as a community board member and as a community member, honest to God. So I would be willing to take us all on each other's word that we'll get back to the other parts of this as long as we can scratch the doctor's note. Thanks for listening.
Mark, I think those are great. If I could just, I think those are great points. And this is exactly why we wanted to do this meeting, was to get reactions from both task force members and committee members so that we can then sort of incorporate them and what we ultimately present and vote on. Unfortunately, I don't think we're going to have the opportunity to vote on we like your resolution, Mr. Borough President Office, except these things. I'm hoping that we can do, at least provide some guidance and input as we have been doing for many months. Not sure we're going to be able to do that. So, I think unfortunately it may come down to we either like this or we don't, and we're going to have to vote one way or another. And, on it. And I share your concerns about that. So as I said before, Ken, do you have another question? Otherwise, if you could take your hand down, I want to just make sure.
I raised it again.
Okay, I think we're going to only allow people tonight, at least for the first time being, to just have people raising the people who haven't spoken yet. I know, Barbara, I think you were next. And then I saw Louisa, Beverly, Louisa, and then Jay, and then back to Ken if we have time.
May I just jump in and just say one thing, actually. So this reminds me of something I dealt with just yesterday. Ashley asked if she could give me a note for a doctor's note. And I said, I don't need that. And she reminded me that, oh no, it is the borough president's rule that I present you with a note. And I think that some of these things in practice versus in theory, and I said, no, I really don't need a note. It's okay. And so, the borough president may be suggesting this, but do we actually need to follow through with it? That's just my perspective.
No, thank you. That's really important. And I think it does beg the question of sort of what latitude individual boards have to make decisions on their own. I think we're a very welcoming and sort of accepting board. And I think if somebody is sick, I understand that, but I think they're also part of the reason that people are trying to do this is the default from the way I read this is for everyone who has not been to a task force meeting, or if you've been to all of them, my understanding from reading what the borough president's office is saying is that the default means you need to be at a community board meeting in person, unless you have X, Y, or Z reasons not to be. And there are a lot more X, Y, and Z reasons not to be than there were 2.5 years ago. But the default should be when you join a community board, the expectation is that you're going to be there in person. And there are a whole host of reasons why you may not be able to be in a given month, more so than there were 3 years ago. But I think that's the spirit in which this resolution was intended. So let me go to, sorry for jumping around. It was either Beverly, Louisa, Barbara, or Barbara.
It was Barbara, Beverly,
Barbara, go ahead.
Louisa.
Okay, thanks, Jay.
So presuming that everything you said is accurate, I don't understand, first of all, if there's no flexibility whatsoever, why we're wasting all our time doing this. And secondly, if we do have flexibility to make some adaptations, I don't understand why we're not protecting our health by requiring that people be vaccinated and that we check that at the door. For me, that's a very critical issue. And I'm sure that that is an issue for many people on our board. I want to know who I'm sitting next to. I want to know if that person is vaccinated. Do I need to wear a mask? I probably will anyway, but why can't we add that? Nobody says anything, not the BP, not the draft that you came up with. There's just nothing. We go out.
The draft that we came up with, we will be updating the draft that has been circulated. And to your point about why we're wasting our time, I don't consider anything we've done being a waste of time. If you think it's a waste of time, you don't need to be on this call.
My question, Elizabeth, is if there's no flexibility, then we're spinning a lot of wheels here, it seems to me. If you tell me that there is some adaptability possible, then I'm interested in this.
What I said was that there is going to be flexibility within each community board. And I think that was raised by Mark's point and what Max amplified. I think that what the borough president wants is something to be able to show, look, all 12 community boards agree on this. We can either agree or not agree to it. And, I think it wasn't something I drafted. I hope that he listened to us and listened to what we sent him feedback from all of our meetings that we have done so far. It's up to him to take that and his team to take that into consideration. I think there are other ways we can be helpful over the course of the summer to help guide this policy, but the policy has been set. I mean, it's been set by open meetings law. And, as of July 15th, we've got a new set of rules we've got to work under. So I think with that in mind, if I could just go to the next group of folks and we can continue the meeting. So I think, Louisa, you were next.
I think I was.
Sure, I thought it was
Beverly, go ahead. Beverly, go ahead.
Yeah, just a quick procedural question, if I can.
Sure.
The letter from the borough president's office that was circulated along with the document we're discussing calls for a public meeting to vote on this by a certain date, right? So what I'm wondering is if the vote for the task force is on July 11th, what do we do following that in order to get a public meeting, hopefully before we have to meet in person?
Well, I think this is a public meeting today. I think it was hopefully
noticed. Sorry. A public hearing. Was it noticed as a public hearing?
We've had several public hearings over the course of the last 6 months on this issue.
Okay, so we're okay on that one, we think.
Yes.
Okay, that's all. But will the full board vote before the 15th?
No. Anyone who wants to come to the meeting on the 11th can come and vote, but I don't believe there will be a special meeting unless Stephen Brown says there should be.
Don't you need a quorum on the 11th of the full board?
We're going to send the invite out to everyone on the 11th. And then the full board is welcome to attend on that.
We need a quorum of the task force on the 11th, not of the full board.
Really? How many people are in the task force, if I can ask?
Max, do you want to give the running total?
I can. So many things happening at once right now. I'm so sorry.
I got it.
I like at the door. I think it's 13, but here just
it's on the website, everyone.
Yeah,
and look, we are doing the best we can with changing circumstances. I appreciate everyone asking very thorough questions.
Elizabeth, I understand how difficult this is. It's just that what has been proposed is somewhat draconian for many people. And I have a question that may be in the weeds, but as a committee chairperson and determining what is a quorum, is there some kind of deadline at which people have to tell you they won't be at the meeting, therefore I may not have a quorum, therefore I'm not sure what I do at that point, just call people and ask them to kind of show up somehow. You see what I'm talking about? I can't wait until the night of the meeting to find out who is going to show up in person and who is not
So
going to be
Louisa,
able to.
this is part of the reason that we started this task force, and your points are very well taken. And I do not think, just my personal opinion is that I do not think the borough president's office has thought through all of these particular issues when it comes in particular to committee meetings. How you have to make the choice about who shows up in person versus virtually, how you determine when you need to have a quorum, how you determine, those are all things we have talked about within this task force. Jay, I see you're shaking your head and you'll go next. So, but those are all things that I personally feel like this resolution has not, the resolution that came to us from the borough president's office has not taken into consideration a panoply of things that we have talked about as a task force over the last 6 months. And I don't know why they haven't. I don't know why they haven't sent a representative to come to listen to us. But I don't think that, like, as it stands right now, I, as a member of the task force, I don't even know if as the chair I can vote, but I'm assuming I can. And if I can vote, I would not vote in support of this as it stands right now. So I'm going to go to Jay and then to Shelly, since he hasn't spoken yet, and then back to Ken.
First of all, I think it's really important that everybody read the statute. There's a couple of things Ken had asked as to what discretion there is. Under the statute, number one, I don't suspect this has any likelihood of happening, we don't have to permit remote participation in meetings at all. The board could vote to go back to in-person meetings only. The statute is not mandatory, it's permissive. That's one point. Secondly, I disagree that a meeting of this task force satisfies the legal requirement in the statute that the body approve this as a public meeting. We need to have whatever decision is made to be done by a majority at a full board meeting. That's number two. The third thing I just wanted to comment on was Mark's observation about a doctor's note. The suggested or proposed, or whatever you want to call it, resolution of the borough president, and we do have discretion to make tons of changes if we will, as long as they comply and comport with the requirements of the law and possibly the guidelines of the New York State Commission on Open Meetings. So we have discretion. And my final observation, Mark, is that the way I'm reading this proposal from the borough president, the only excuse for not attending that requires a doctor's note is 3C, which is a medical condition creating vulnerability to COVID. The others don't reference a doctor's note. So it's a very, in my opinion, I don't see it anywhere, that's the only instance in which a doctor's note is required. So maybe take a fresh look at that and see if you agree with me.
Thanks, Jay. I'll go to Shelly, and then if people still have their hands raised and don't plan to ask a question, if they could please lower them. I'll go to Shelly, then back to Ken, and then back to people who have second responses.
I would recommend not approving what the borough president's office has sent to us. I think it's lacking in many ways. Number one, it's lacking in health guidelines for these in-person meetings. And I think that Barbara brought it up clearly, but I think has to be all our concern. COVID has not gone away, and people are vulnerable to different degrees. Just about everyone I've known has had COVID recently when they were very careful all along because of being a little lax. And for some people, it's a very, very serious situation. For others, less. I just want to say I have a sister-in-law who now has a serious medical condition, which they thought was unrelated to COVID, but now has been found in women her age. Okay. And consistently, the doctors are learning about it. So we have to be very careful. Number two, anything like a doctor's note is outrageous. Okay. Not only because of the HIPAA, but because it's demeaning. It shows a lack of trust. And I think it was said, I'm not a third grader either. I think some suggestions that we came up with in the resolution are very good things. Certainly we could add them later, but this is an inadequate presentation by the Borough President's Office, and to vote for it, okay, saying we'll do something later would be a mistake. The last thing is, if we need to have a meeting called of the full board. We could have a task force meeting leading to a full board meeting, but people have to know that we need a quorum. And
Shelly, if I could just stop you right there, because I was
Sure.
the point that I wanted to address with Jay.
Sure, please.
I agree. I think it would be great to have the full board join. My understanding, and Max, since he's back, I know you've been dealing with a million things, so thank you for coming back. My understanding is that if we need to do a full board vote after July 15th, it will have to be in person with a quorum.
So why don't we do it on
what everyone
before
is
the
saying
15th?
is that we're prepared to do that, and we can get 26 people in the board office, COVID be damned, to go and vote, and people want to do that, then let's plan to do it. But if that's not possible, then we're not going to do it.
Right, so let's do it before July 15th, where we can do it by Zoom. And I'm sure if people feel this is a serious thing and it's brought to their attention how important it is that we can get a quorum, and making an extra special effort, I'd be willing to call every board member myself.
I'm sure you would, and I think that's up to I think I will do that as the chair of the task force, and I will make sure that we tell people to be there if we need to do that. I just want to make sure that people know that there is, the quorum required, and after the 15th, if we don't, if we really feel we need to do a full board vote, then we can do it. If that's what Jay legally thinks is required, I did not get the sense that that is, but if that's what we would like to do as a board, I'm happy to make sure that the board knows that in order to pass or to support this resolution, we need to have it voted on by the full board and not just the task force.
Well, I just want to say the reason I think it needs to be is to make it something like every other resolution, that it's recognized because the whole full board voted on it. And secondly, that every board member should know exactly what's going on and given an opportunity to vote on it.
Yes, and they've had many months to be able to join and listen and come to meetings like this and hear about things.
Now when we're coming to a resolution, I think they should be They should be given the right.
Right, and as Max said, the full board has received this draft of the resolution. I do not think the meeting on the 11th, we will have time to be able to spend 5 hours debating it, unless people want to spend 5 hours debating it on the 11th, and I'm happy to do that if people want to. But I do think it's something that we need to decide upon swiftly. And if we can't come to consensus, and we don't have the opportunity to move it beyond the 11th without us all being in person. So.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Thanks, Shelly, and thanks both for that. So I just want to make sure, Seema, I think, was next, and then Polly.
Thank you. I just have a process question, which is, it feels like this conversation has just brought to the fore that the devil is in the details here. And so I'm wondering when all of this gets worked out. Is it at one of these future meetings before the 15th, particularly like who decides on these virtual allowances, I'll call them, what the criteria are, what deadlines are, all of that stuff.
That's what we've been talking about, and Max can respond, but our understanding is that there is a lot, every one of the 12 community boards has committees that have different rules for when they meet, how they meet, how they determine attendance and other things. It is absolutely unclear to me on how the borough president is going to enforce these quorum rules. So Max, do you have any understanding from the borough president's office?
I think the process, and I'm saying I think, and this is not definitive, is that we technically can gamble and we can take our time crafting any other specifics up until the time when either the state or the city emergency order is over, and then we actually do have to assemble and at least a quorum in person, and we can kind of just pass another resolution or something of that nature to add in our specifics about how we want to handle the Zooms.
So is that to say that we could maybe sort of approve a version of this resolution and then leave it up to the different committee chairs and also the board chair to sort of figure out how it actually works in practice?
That's also correct. And that's what all the other boards seem to be doing. They're just approving this to say, hey, look, now we can all meet hybrid once the mayor and the governor stop leapfrogging extensions of emergency orders. And we can now meet remotely. And now let's all disperse and figure it all out from here individually and a little collectively.
And again, that's where the task force is trying to, we've been spending our time doing, is looking at, okay, you know, those of you who are committee chairs, how do you make the decision on who gets, you know, who says they get excused from a meeting and who has to be there in person? How do you determine when you have a quorum? If you have 9 people on your committee, when do you have to get firm commitments that 5 people are going to be there so that you can vote in person? And that, I think that is exceedingly complicated and something that puts the onus a lot more on, for CB7, on the committee chairs. And then for the full board, it also puts the onus on the board chair to determine, you know, who, oh, I have a cold and I'm sick, or I have COVID, or I have something that might be contagious, or I have to stay home with my kids. Like what are the, and that's what Mark and Shelly and I have been working on. And I think in addition to what we vote on the 11th, what I would like to do is make sure that the document that Shelly and Mark and I have been working on gets shared with the full board, or at a minimum, the task force, so that we can make sure that it reflects what we think Community Board 7 feels like is the road ahead. So Polly, over to you.
Thank you.
Okay, so I just want to start out by saying that I agree with Mark and everyone else regarding a note. I do, and Shelly as well. I do feel that, you know, as adults, community leaders, and professionals, that's a pretty extreme. So I definitely would vote against that. In addition to what Barbara said regarding masks and whether someone is vaccinated or not, you know, as a health precaution, I think that's important. And I do feel, out of courtesy for my fellow board members, you know, I wouldn't have a problem, you know, and I think we shouldn't, you know, as a courtesy, just to wear a mask for now until the Department of Health or, you know, the city says that the COVID situation has improved and it's not necessary, because most people, when they go out, whether you're still going to the store or in the subway traveling, people do wear masks as a precaution. So I just think that it makes more sense that if we're going to meet in person at the board office, and also for the public as well, to say to them, you know, we would prefer if you wear a mask while you're in this space, out of courtesy for everyone else as a precaution. That's it. It's not saying that a person isn't vaccinated or that they have COVID, but, you know, just as a safety precaution, I think that that should be part of the resolution. And then from what I'm reading, you know, with the what the borough president's office sent, you know, it's pretty much cut and dry. If we're going to do hybrid meetings, okay, as you said, Elizabeth, we all made a commitment to show up, right? And so when it comes to extenuating circumstances, then that would be death. If someone dies, then I'm quite sure, you know, that that's something that you know is inexcusable, you're not able to attend a meeting. So a lot of, any other reasons other than that is a moot point, because we all made a commitment. If I have a cold or something, I still show up in person regardless to do what I need to do. So I think that that's understood. I don't think that it has to be written in the resolution, because I know you said that you and Mark and Shelly are drafting something, but I just feel like that's not necessary. That's a little extreme, because it's common sense. If you're physically incapable, it would have to be an emergency. And I think someone would call Max or the office to let them know, I have an emergency, I will not be able to be there. And I do feel that on the committee level, I think it should be up to the chairs, the co-chairs of the committees, to determine as far as, having the quorum, what is considered, a reason for not showing up. And as I think you said earlier in other meetings, we have 3 allowed absences anyway.
Exactly.
So we only really have to show up for 7 meetings. So I don't think that we should continue to, put in language that allows us to be able to miss more meetings. You understand what I'm saying? So I just feel that we need to have a framework. We know that we're required to attend at least 7 meetings, right, per term. And so therefore, if it's an emergency such as death or some emergency that someone has to go to the hospital, then, we've been doing prior to COVID, I think we've been pretty respectful as far as making sure and committed to what we signed up for. So I don't see the reason for adding extra and expanding more language, but what we already have in place, basically. I think we should stick to the guidelines. And then if there's exceptions, then it should be up to the co-chairs of that committee. And then they can, deal with that, because that's their committee. And they basically set up the guidelines for their meetings, etc. So that's my spin. That's my position.
Thank you, Kelly. And you summed up, I think, what a lot of people are thinking, and that was incredibly well said, much better than I have done over the last 6 months. So thank you. I just want to remind everyone, I don't think Susan Schwartz is on this call, but we did ratify and adopt new bylaws. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong on this, but my understanding is that, again, we are no longer meeting in July. We have 10 full board meetings and not 12. We used to have 11. Now we have 10. Furthermore, we have 3 excused absences, which is more than we have had before. And then there is obviously requests for leaves of absence for periods of time. So I think the bylaws committee made that quite generous in terms of, or maybe it's generous, maybe it's not, but that is the new world that CB7 is living in based on the vote that was taken last month. So we only have a few minutes left. So I want to get to people who haven't spoken. Ethel, I know you haven't, and Klari, and then I think we can go back to the people who have spoken once already.
Thank you very much. Thank you. It's the first time I'm attending this, and I thank you all for the privilege of that I could attend here. I certainly feel that a number of comments that I have heard tonight have been practical, have been wise, have been compassionate. And I think that the collective deliberations under the chair and many of the comments tonight have shown that there really is responsible deliberation in Board 7. And I only comment with respect to the Manhattan Borough President's letters, which I did read carefully. I think that they have been done perhaps too much in a sort of formulaic way, or maybe have not appreciated if it was a process there that maybe needed to come to a conclusion. It was not always helpful. I think the deliberations here are very helpful and responsive, and I strongly urge that the resolution, whether it was drafted, as you described, but with some of or many of the very practical points made by a number of the members here, be adopted and we move ahead. Thanks.
Thanks. Thank you, Ethel. Thank you for that. Klari, over to you.
Yeah, so I wasn't going to say anything, but I think that Elizabeth, your sort of summary and reference to the bylaws a moment ago was not exactly accurate, but I'm not going to try to correct it because I don't have it in front of me either. But I do very much continue to have the overall opinion that in substantial part because of the extremely generous set of circumstances and number of circumstances in which one can get away with not attending a full board meeting or a committee meeting under our new bylaws, although they're a little different from how you describe them, that is a very strong reason in addition to others why wherever we come out on excusing somebody on a permanent basis for not attending in person should be very, very narrow and carefully thought through. And that has been my theme, and I think the theme of many of us since we started talking about it. I have one other question, and I think it's for Max. Max, when I was reading some stuff the other day, what was still unclear to me was the issue of whoever these folks are that get excused sort of permanently from attending in person. It was not clear to me that they could still vote, or that under the, I'm talking about the statutes, I'm not talking about our, whatever we say and do. But it was not clear to me from the summaries of whatever you sent around, not yesterday, but previously, that somebody who is allowed to participate and I think even be part of a quorum in person could vote if not in person. Can you add anything on that? Maybe I was misreading it.
Yes, I'll start by saying I was incorrect at the last meeting. If you're home, you are able to, doesn't count for quorum, but you are able to vote. And I was definitely incorrect. I had that a little inverted last
Okay,
week.
well, that clears up that confusion, but it reinforces my view that the circumstances in which somebody should be able to participate fully from home should be very, very unusual and restricted.
Yes, Klari, thank you for clarifying that, and Max as well. But that is exactly what we have been talking about, which is, again, starting from the default that these meetings, and again, I want most of the people on this call, I think everyone on this Zoom today are people who have been at an in-person meeting at least once. There are a lot of new board members who have never been to an in-person meeting, and they do not know exactly what you just walked through, Klari. So I think part of this is educating, the full board, getting them comfortable with knowing that we are going to have a hybrid approach. I think we all agree that we want to have a hybrid approach for largely health-related reasons, which is what the lion's share of how this resolution from the Borough President's Office got adopted. So we have one more minute. I think just maybe.
I'd like to add one quick minute, if I may. Bob
Who is that?
Bob is here.
Oh, Bob, you're here. You haven't spoken yet. Of course. Go ahead.
Yes, well, very briefly, I think that I really appreciate that Polly surmised the whole thing in such a clear and lucid, succinct way, and that without getting into the without becoming complicated, managed to formulate it in a way that everybody's interest and gets to the actual point. I think you yourself said that it's you appreciated her point of view. So I just wanted to endorse that and keeping it simple and keeping it true and to the point, because between you and I, don't share this with anyone else. My head can spin. Okay. And I go through meetings, and sometimes I go to a few meetings on the same theme, and I wonder, where am I? At what point do I walk in, and that sort of thing. But I think we're getting to it right there with what Polly had to offer, and so I want to appreciate that, and I think the others appreciate it as well. Thank you.
And I think that may be the last comment for the evening.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great comment. And again, this is complicated. This is not something that we can walk into a meeting after 2 or 3 meetings. The legislation has changed. Politicians have changed what they've said for us. We are doing our best as a task force, and I'm incredibly grateful for all of your patience and your patience with us to sort of get the guidance that we need. As a next step, again, the plan is for a July 11th meeting on Monday. I think the last thing I'd just like to ask people quickly, and raise your hand if you disagree, is if starting that meeting in the early evening at 5:30 or 6 would work for most of you, for sort of no more than 90 minutes, where we will have, over the course of the holiday weekend, documents sent to the full board so they can read through things. I will do my best to run that with the help of all of you, and take a position on what the borough president is asking us on, but also potentially having, whether it's a letter or some of the things Polly suggested, that we can provide to the borough president's office. But I think keeping it simple, getting this out of the way, I will say that I think we need to have the latitude as a board and as committees to be able to, the committee chairs need to have the latitude to make a lot of the decisions on how they're going to determine who attends meetings. So we're 1 minute
Elizabeth,
over.
can I leave you with just one quick thought?
Sure, for about 30 seconds, and then we're going to get cut off.
Which you need to consider. You need to speak to Stephen about. We cannot adopt an effective resolution from a task force. We need to have a full meeting of the public body, which is the full community board, and that's statutory. If we adopt something on July 11th, that's not at a full
Ajay, I
meeting.
think we said that we would have the full board. We would call the full
Yeah,
board.
but it has to be, we need a
It has to be called that way.
full
Yeah, we're
board
going to
meeting
define it that way.
with
We're going to,
with a
That's
quorum.
the plan.
what the
That's
law
the plan,
says.
everyone. Hey guys, I've been explained a lot today by all of you. That's what we're going to do. So no more of the explaining. Have a great day. And thank you so much for all of your contributions. And we'll see you on the 11th.